By rooting Turning Red very specifically in the Asian community of Toronto, the film legitimately feels like it was made for Domi Shi's friends and immediate family members, which is fine, but also a tad limiting in its scope. Bro, I don't think that's the only reason why you might not relate to this film. You can thank my patrons for the making of this video because it was only due to their pledges that I was able to subscribe to Disney Plus, for the explicit purpose of watching Turning Red. The 11th of March 2022, Disney Pixar released a new movie Turning Red, a coming-of-age comedy focused on 13-year-old Mei-Lin Lee, a cheerful academic Chinese-Canadian as she traverses through the trials and tribulations of tween life in 2002. Mei-Lin loves her friends, family, and her favourite boy band, Four Town. Trouble is, the women in her family have a habit of turning into a giant red panda when experiencing intense emotion after they reach a certain age. This video will mostly be comprised in two parts. The first is cultural aspects and references that I picked up on and I was so happy to see in a Disney Pixar movie. And the second is to go over criticisms of the movie, some before the movie even came out and some after, and assess whether or not I think they're fair. There are several different cultural aspects that I certainly picked up upon. The first is Confucianism. Confucianism is a belief system originating in ancient China stemming from the teachings of Confucius, 551 BCE to 497 BCE. It is a philosophy that focuses on the importance of personal ethics and morality and is still influential across Asia to this day. And it's particularly integral to how Asian families, more specifically Chinese families, believe they should be. In fact, it's such a consensus that this is the correct way to be that many families across China will behave in these ways without even knowing where the teachings of why they should behave in those ways came from. For example, in the West, there are certain dining habits that we just tend to do, eating with a knife and fork, not burping during a meal, not having your elbows on the table while you're eating. Just things that are done that we don't really know why they're done, it's just seen as good etiquette. And the typical Chinese etiquette that comes from Confucianism can be seen in Turning Red. For example, respecting your parents above all, which is something that Mei-Lin explicitly states at the very start of the film. And also duty over pleasure, another Confucianism teaching. Mei-Lin ditches her friends and doesn't go to karaoke with them because she needs to work at the family shrine. These are all ideas that come from Confucianism, but are just done naturally within Chinese families because it's seen as the right thing to do. There's also another part in the film that is like a really quick moment, but it's when Mei-Lin's mother looks under the bed and finds all of the things that she hides from her mother, and one of those things that she's hidden is a test that has a B+ score on it. Confucius also taught about the importance of education and academic achievement, and many people have taken this nowadays to mean getting the absolute best grades you possibly can, and anything lower than an A is a failure. This is a common trope when talking about Asian families. Another little tidbit that I really liked is when Mei-Lin and her mother sat down and they were watching a historical C-drama. Historical C-dramas are really popular in China. Hongdian World Studios is a massive town built with the sole purpose of filming dramas. That's how much they love their dramas. They have a town to film them in. The red panda as a monster may also be ironic or a pun, because in some Asian cultures, they see red pandas as symbols of gentleness, compromise, and patience. So to have the red panda be portrayed in this chaotic sense, it could be an inside joke. I'm not sure about that, who knows? The colour red is also exceedingly important. Western symbolism portrays red as the approach of puberty, maturation, and blood. This can be seen in the Western fairy tale of Little Red Riding Hood, a young girl coming of age with a red hood. And in some versions, when she gets into bed with the wolf, it has a very different connotation. Something about innocence and losing one's virginity. Yeah, if you didn't know that before, I'm sorry I ruined it for you. In contrast, red is a lucky colour in China. And the plot of Turning Red combines these concepts, just like it brings the East and the West together by following a diaspora family. It's not just a puberty analogy, it encompasses everything together about the symbolism of the colour red. It's a lucky colour and it's a good thing to grow up, which is something that, by the end of the movie, Maylin's mother has to accept for her. The last little bit I would like to say is that it's interesting that the ancestral shrine is outside the home. Traditionally, the ancestral shrine would be inside the home, but with the mixing cultures, the existence of temples and diaspora groups mean that some ancestral shrines can be found outside in separate buildings. Again, it's bringing the East and the West together in some sense. In the West, you mostly bury your dead outside and leave them there with gravestones. While that is the same, there are also the existence of ancestral shrines inside the home. I mean, I guess you guys do bring urns inside with ashes in, but you don't really make a shrine to your ancestors. That's a very Asian thing. These are just a few themes and references that I noticed on my initial watch, and I'm sure there are plenty more that other people who are more well-versed in this will also get. Speaking of culture, let's get on to the criticisms of this movie. At the beginning, I read out a quote from Shane O'Connell, who is a film critic, who thought that it being rooted in the Asian community would limit the scope of the movie. I don't think that this is true whatsoever. Any of the cultural aspects and references in this movie aren't part of the narrative or the plot themselves. They don't change anything about the plot. It merely adds further context to the plot in relation to the main character. The same plot could have happened and the main character could have been of any race regardless. I will go into the relatability of the film and how I think it is limited in some aspects later on in this section, but I don't think it has anything to do with the race of the main character. I don't think it has anything to do with May being Chinese. The main character of Turning Red could have been white and the same events could still play out. There just might be another explanation as to why they turn into a certain animal, and it might not be a red panda, it might be a different animal that is more closely related to the culture of the white character. You could have had the movie centre around a British character, and the British character could turn into a giant corgi, because corgis are a beloved animal in Britain. The Queen has corgis. And the reason that they turn into a giant corgi isn't because of actions of their ancestors, but because of witchcraft. Because witchcraft is a documented practice within British history. That would still make sense. The same plot could still happen with a few tweaks. And this is why I don't think May being Chinese actually changes anything about the story itself. It merely adds a different perspective on events that, quite frankly, we've seen before. Coming-of-age stories aren't a new thing. Having a comedic, overprotective parent isn't a new concept or trope within TV or cinema. And those are the reasons why I find it hard to believe that the Asian twist on this story makes it hard to relate to. I think that just says more about how you view Asians in relation to yourself, Sean O'Connell. As well as this, there was a point brought up by Shrefilas Productions. I'm really sorry if I've got your name wrong. They point out that there have been really popular movies going over the story of young Asian women that they have related to. A good example of this is Chihiro from Spirited Away. Spirited Away is a beloved and acclaimed children's movie. Loads of people adore this movie, and it's not just young Asian women or just women that love this movie. And that's because of the way that Spirited Away is constructed and the story that happens within. Spirited Away talks about much broader themes that many different people can relate to. And this is where I'm going to talk about Turning Red possibly being limiting, not based on the race of the main character, but based on the events and the characters themselves. For example, it is not a new thing, or something that hasn't been done before, that has a main character go through embarrassing parental moments, or having crushes, or having fights with their friends. What I do think about this movie is that it was made with a very specific target audience in mind, that being females. I think it was predominantly targeted towards females, women, either young girls that are currently going through the same kind of things as May, metaphorically, or grown women that have already had those cringy experiences but still look back on them with fondness. I think that's why some people like Sean will not relate to this movie. I think it's very much a female-based story for women. That's what I think about it. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I don't think all movies have to be targeted towards everyone. I just think trying to say that the problem of the movie was the race of the main character is disingenuous. Leading on from some people honing in on the limiting factor being it based on an Asian community, for so many years minority groups were told that if they wanted to see themselves represented in media, then why not just make their own media? Stop demanding other creators to include you. Make your own. But when we do make our own representation and we do make our own media, we're told that it's not relatable enough, it's way too limiting. What do you want? Another criticism that I've seen is that Turning Red encourages kids to rebel and that it's okay to rebel. I think again this might be something that could be lost in translation. She isn't necessarily rebelling to the fullest extent. A lot of the story is talking about how Chinese-specific expectations of children can somewhat be harmful and can limit what children can and cannot do, which will affect how they can express themselves as an independent person. But again, disobeying authority figures and your parents isn't a new thing. Making bad choices isn't a new thing in movies either. Anna literally wants to marry somebody she's just met in Frozen, and still wants to until they reveal themselves to be the bad guy. She doesn't particularly change her mind up until that point. The message of the movie is more so that there needs to be a balance between family life and friendship, between duty and pleasure, rather than having one consume the other. I don't think the movie was outright saying, yes, disobey your parents for the hell of disobeying your parents. May clearly was struggling at home with all of the expectations that were put upon her. She didn't just do it out of nowhere. The last point I'm going to touch on in this video is the criticism that the movie received even before it came out just based on promotional material and trailers, and that is some people really didn't like the animation or art style, which is personal preference. I really liked the art style. I think that the character designs perfectly encapsulated the personalities of each character. They all managed to look different while simultaneously being able to exist in the same universe, unlike a la Frozen, where everybody just had the same face shape in that movie. They're meant to be related. Yeah, they're meant to be related. They're not meant to be identical twins. You can have characters appear to be related without making them look the same. I also really liked the colour palette of the movie. It was really vibrant and energetic and really made the tone of the movie pop. Other criticisms of the movie I do understand. I do think because it is based on the story of a 13-year-old girl in 2002, that may have narrowed the scope of the relatability a little bit, as I've mentioned beforehand. It's a very specific group of people that this movie is trying to speak to in regards to the gender and the age of the protagonist. Other people complained that the story was too simplistic and predictable and there were very few stakes in it, and I can understand that criticism as well. I also think that it's just a nice simple story about coming of age and doesn't necessarily have to be this thrilling, fast-paced movie. It can just be that, a simple coming-of-age story, even if it was a little bit predictable, and some of the plot parts, well, there were some plot contrivances in that. Overall, I really did like Turning Red. It's not a perfect movie, I wouldn't say it's my favourite Pixar movie, but it was good for what it was. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Did you really like Turning Red? Did you find it too predictable, or did you find the cultural aspects somewhat distracting? Question mark. And thank you again to my patrons for making this video possible. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.